You're listening to Southeastern Fly's The Angler's Influence.
They have wood floors, they have wood walls that separate rooms inside, interior walls. But they're these big giant canvas tents with like big plastic windows that you can pull open. They have big cushy mattresses on beds, and they even put big white fluffy bathrobes in there. The shower in the luxury tents has 8 shower heads. I don't know why that's a big deal, but
Seems like a big deal.
I'm not an 8 shower head person, but I guess it's a luxury thing to have a bunch of different shower heads. So it even has like a fancy shower in it. We've got 4 of those big tents. Each tent has one bedroom that has two twin beds. That's a bunk bed, and then the other room has a queen bed. And then I've reserved the campsite that's closest to the tents that sits right on the edge of the river. That'll kind of be our gathering place where everybody, it'll be just more open space for us to gather, because each tent has a little fire pit area in front of it, but then there's a big space that kind of connects one campsite and one of the tents, and that'll kind of be our gathering spot. We're having local restaurants do our food for lunches and for dinners and breakfast. My goal with the retreat, it's not necessarily just for beginners, not necessarily for people who know everything to do, an excuse to get women together to go fishing together, but to help people understand how to read the water and fish this kind of a setting.
So the Great Smoky Mountain National Park type water.
Yes, small mountain streams. You have to do a lot of roll casts, sidearm casts, understanding how to read the water, understanding that you're not doing, the big, beautiful river runs through it cast that everybody wants to do. There aren't many opportunities to do that in the mountains. There's a few big, long runs that you can do some big, wide open casts, but a lot of it is just short casts, controlling the line. Line control is really key here to get a good drift and to set the hook. Makes a big difference. So little things like that, we're going to kind of do on-stream workshop type stuff in the mornings and then just go fishing. So it's not guided. It's not, I'm not going to be guiding somebody one-on-one like I do when I'm out on a guide day. I'm going to be with a whole group, and we're going to kind of talk about what kind of cast to use and what you're looking for in the water. We'll talk about it at camp. Camp is bigger water. It's a little river. It runs right through the middle of town. It is stocked, so it has some bigger fish in it. It also has smallmouth in it. So we'll talk about some of that, and then we'll go up into the mountain streams. I'd love to, and we'll kind of feel out the whole group as to what they want to do while we're there, but I would love to take them all up, like Lynn Camp Prong, where we can walk up a trail and spread out, and everybody can kind of get into some of the native brook trout that we have here, which is just beautiful.
Yes.
They're our smallest fish, but I think they're the most gorgeous, and I really think brook trout is great. They're a little more aggressive. So,
yes.
With a rainbow trout or a brown trout, they might hit your fly once and spook off. The brook trout don't seem to be quite as skittish. I think that's just their nature, even though they're wild, just like the rainbows and the browns are here. They're just a little more aggressive in grabbing the fly.
Little fish with a big attitude.
And it's just one of the most beautiful, the brook trout water here, I always say it's like walking through waterfalls all day. It's like most of the fishing here is, but especially when you're in brook trout area, it's like Never Land. It's just gorgeous. So I really want to help introduce people to that and just make it an experience and a fun, no pressure kind of situation where people can just go have fun.
So, hey, everybody. Welcome in to Southeastern Fly, the Angler's Influence, and today we're talking to Charity Rutter of R&R Fly Fishing in Townsend, Tennessee, and we're here at the Heritage Center in Townsend, where it's basically the history, sort of a museum of Appalachia. We're in the auditorium, lots of lights, lots of shows, I understand, go on here. It's been probably 3 years since I've been here, maybe longer than that. You can walk the grounds. They have there's a concert venue outside, for summer stuff. But if you come to Townsend, hopefully you'll take some of your time and come through the museum here and look at the life of Appalachia as it unfolded throughout history up until today. And as we talked to Charity today, so it sounds like this retreat that you're talking about, it sounds like you're going to learn some stuff in the morning, and then you're going to get to go, quote unquote, put it to use or play in the afternoon. Yeah. And you're going to feed people really well, which is super important.
Oh, yeah. We can control the food. We can't control the weather. We can't control the fishing, but we can make sure you get good food.
Right.
Sure.
So here on Influence, we talk about the people, place, things, or ideas that shape your fly fishing, not necessarily the businesses that we're in, although those are important to us. As we talk through those people, places, ideas, things that influence us, the one thing that we want to know is, how does it influence you? Or how does something that influence you, what do you learn from that? And how do you carry that forward? And as we talk to people, I found that we can piece together all the way through their life, right up from the time that they started fishing, just regular fishing. A lot of folks just start regular, just like I did, probably just like you did, where you're just, it may be a worm from a coffee can, and that's okay. The next thing you know, somebody introduces you to fly fishing, and then you just kind of take off. So that's the way that these things have been going, and it's usually just really good conversation, and we hope that everybody learns something. We want to be able to teach somebody something through this, and we were talking earlier just before we started here about the brook trout and those big long casts. So whenever I first started fishing with my buddy Pat up here, we went up not far from where we're sitting here, and it was just about the time that I learned how to cast probably 40 feet. I could probably do 40 feet really good, at the time, or what I thought was really good. It's probably terrible, but I could see motioning, because it's pretty loud up on the rivers up in the Smokies, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard to hear people sometimes when you're standing in rushing water.
I could see him flailing his arms, though, and it looked like he was yelling at me as I was doing these 40-foot casts, and I couldn't tell. So he finally walked into where I could hear, into view and into sight and into hearing range, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm casting. What are you doing? Why aren't you in the water?" He said, "You're not going to catch anything like that." And I was like, "Really?" Because I saw that on TV. Yeah, and I've been doing this almost, this is probably my 4th week, and I've caught some fish. But he said that you got to get a good drift, David. You got to get a good drift. It's interesting because that was one of the things that you said, and it's presentation, and especially up here, you have to get really good presentation, and that'll probably be one of the things I'm sure that y'all will talk about in your upcoming event.
Oh yeah, presentation's really important. I always say that it applies to trout the same way it applies to people. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. The same applies in fly fishing. If you smack the water and things go swimming around and skiing through there, they're not going to eat it the 4th or 5th time it comes through. Make the first cast count.
If you don't learn anything else from the next little bit of time here, that's something that right there is a nugget that we all should take into account. You're right. You never get a second chance to make a first impression, and trout are no different.
Yeah.
So Charity, you're owner with Ian. You both own R&R Fly Fishing here in Townsend. Is that right?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that before we move on.
Okay. We are full-time fly fishing guides. We started our business in 2002. Ian wrote a book that was a guide to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and we were both guiding at Blackberry Farm, a private place, when the book released, and our phones started ringing off the wall, people wanting us to take them fishing, and not all of them could stay at Blackberry Farm. And we talked to our friend that we were working for there and told him, and he was totally cool with it. He's like, "I understand not everybody that wants to fish with you can stay here. Go do what you need to do." And so R&R Fly Fishing was born from that. We never intended, our intention was not to have a guide service. But when the book came out and so many people were calling us, and just because of the book and because so many people knew Ian through the years fly fishing, we decided that's what we needed to do.
And you're also expanding your business. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we have a new online instructional fly fishing course that's called Rise, Fly Fishing Advice from the Guides. And the idea is that we have all of these short segments that if you have started fly fishing, or if you're wanting to learn, or if you're wanting to teach someone else that you know, we've broken it out into little small 3 to 5 minute segments that create a course full of multiple segments to help teach you just little tips and techniques and things about fly fishing. We've just started it, just released in December of 2018, and we're going to really be building on it.
So where do we find this?
There's a website called riseflyfishingadvice.com, and the whole idea is that we're using our knowledge of, we've both been guiding people for more than 20 years, and we know that not everybody learns the same, and we know that there's all kinds of little bitty things that if you just knew that one little thing, it might have made a big difference in your day. And so we're trying to really apply those things and share them in a simple format, in a short format, 3 to 5 minutes at a time per video. So yeah, it's all on the website. We're going to continue to grow. We're adding more this spring as we go. But it's just a new piece of sharing it and just helping people enjoy the sport.
And I can find that at riseflyfishingadvice.com.
Yes.
So as you started, let's go back. Let's start back before you met Ian, I guess. How did you? What was probably your first influence as far as fly fishing goes, or as far as let's start with fishing. Let's start with let's go back to your first fishing. Let's start there, and then we'll move forward if that's okay.
Okay. Well, I grew up on a farm in rural Oklahoma. We had ponds and creeks, and we always went to lakes and stuff in the summertime. My brother loved to fish. My mom loved to fish, but it wasn't something we did all the time. I was the youngest of the 3 kids in my family. So usually if we were fishing, I was the one that was playing with tying on the weights or, grabbing a turtle if there was a turtle on the bank or something like that. I wasn't really as into the fishing as much as I was just being outside. I was a Girl Scout. I loved to camp, and I remember one year in Girl Scouts we learned how to do little plaster casts of prints in the mud, like animal print, and we had creeks on our property, so I got that stuff, and I'd go down to the creek as much as I could to go find prints and make little casts of prints and stuff like that.
So
it wasn't as much fishing as just being outside.
You really were into the outdoors then.
Completely.
Yeah. Okay.
It was my happy place.
Good for you.
Still is.
Yeah. It better be, right? We're out there every day. So you moving along there, you're I guess that your brother, your mother, your family, I guess, kind of got you into water, understanding and being around it and that sort of thing. And let's move forward then to your next influence. Let's just start wherever you want to, and let's just start with the next influence.
Growing up, my family was always into the outdoors, whether it was for play or work in the farm, taking care of our responsibilities there. Being outside was just a way of life where we were. You always had the gear for it. You were expected to be out in it no matter what the weather was. And in Oklahoma, that wasn't always pleasant. Oklahoma has terrible heat in the summer and yucky winds in the winter and tornado season and all kinds of craziness. But, growing up on the farm with the sheep, with the garden, swimming in ponds, all of that, I was always taught to respect nature and take care of it. I guess,
right.
We really had to take care of things outside so that we did have food from our garden and so that we could take care of the animals on the farm, that kind of stuff.
Farming that's a different way of life because you really do. Animals are going to be, they're dependent on you.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility.
And the barns have to be kept up, and fences and gates and gardens have to be.
Animals have to be fed. And,
right.
All kinds of stuff.
There's a lot of dependency on the farm.
Yeah, and it wasn't my parents' full-time work. My mom worked in the public school system as a teacher and a principal. My dad was an electrician who eventually went to work for natural gas companies. So they both had full-time jobs. My mom had summers off. So we spent a lot of time gardening and canning and taking care of a lot of stuff at the farm in the summertime when she was off. But yeah, it wasn't their full-time gig, so it was even more.
So if you're on the farm, where was town? Where do you go to town?
We lived about 7.5 miles from the nearest town, and that's where our school was. There was a kindergarten through 12 school. It was in Kearney, Oklahoma, a little bitty town. Our school, K through 12, was probably 200 kids. So it was really little. You knew everybody in town, and everybody knew you, and especially with my mom being a school teacher,
Well, it's just almost impossible to do anything wrong, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was harder on my brother and sister. We moved away from there when I was a freshman in high school and moved to a bigger town, which was like culture shock for me. But we were still about 5 miles out of town and lived on an acreage. We didn't have our animals anymore. We sold the farm when I was freshman in high school. So things started changing then. But I still always, we loved to go play in canoes and camp and hike and all of that as much as we could. That was just what we enjoyed. I feel like even though fishing wasn't a huge part of my upbringing, just my love and respect for the outdoors is something that was instilled in me and will be in me till the day I die, kind of thing. And I think that it plays a huge part in my fly fishing and the teaching that I do, helping people understand their surroundings and teaching them ways they can be safe in the outdoors and love it and respect it and take care of it. I think there's a lot of things that people do that damage nature, and it's just ignorance because nobody ever taught them any different. And so sometimes I'll be talking to people about stuff we're doing or where we're going or why we're doing what we do, and I'll say, now, if I'm telling you stuff you already know, please don't be offended. But I've learned through the years that sometimes people just don't know. And so I want to make sure that you understand why I'm telling you this.
This is one thing that it's not always about catching fish. Well, when you first start, it really kind of is.
Well, yeah, it's really exciting.
Right.
Yeah, there's nothing,
but there's so much other stuff going on around you and that's happening that you don't see unless you're out there I want to say day after day, like we're out there every single day. Today would be a horrible day to be out there. But you're out there day after day after day, and you just eventually you see things that others just don't get a chance to see. It's not that we're any smarter or anything like that. We just have more opportunity. There's more opportunity for us.
We do. And as a fly fishing guide, I feel like I'm an ambassador for the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I feel like it's my responsibility to help people understand it and enjoy it. And my hope is that whatever experience they have with me in the national park and whatever they learn, that's something that they will carry with them, even if they're not fishing.
Right. That
it'll be something that'll help grow an understanding in them that they'll share with other people, and maybe they'll want to help protect it when things come up, that stuff needs to be fixed or stuff needs to be protected, and they'll want to stand in and help be a part of that.
Yeah, from time to time, issues will come up within the park, and you want those people on your side when they're needed. When you need them, you want them to have some experience there.
Yeah, it's
a positive experience. If you can give them a positive experience, and you need that help on the back end to maybe save something or maybe some work needs to be done or something like that. If you fish with enough people and show them enough things, eventually you'll get enough of those folks that'll want to help you.
Yeah.
That'll want to help the park, not necessarily us.
Yeah, and just help keep the water clean. A few years ago, we started doing Troutman Classroom. I had been talking about it for a long time with our local TU chapter, and they agreed to let me set up a tank at the elementary school here in Townsend, and it has been so fun. There are so many kids that grow up here, and their grandparents live on the river. Every summer their life has been playing and fishing and swimming and stuff in the river, but when they learn that they can have a say in keeping that water clean by somebody not throwing their trash along the side of the road that's eventually going to blow in the water, or not dumping the oil from changing the oil on their truck ends up in the water. Little things like that they never knew that was harmful until they started learning how to take care of these trout in this tank. And it's almost like we've seen them take ownership in the river that maybe they didn't have before. It's really cool. And it's really fun.
We're talking about influences. Kids influence stuff like that. Unbelievable. You think about if you don't wear your seatbelt, who's the first one to say something? A kid is going to say, hey, put your seatbelt on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is influence, and that's a big influence right there, is having the kids understand the need to keep stuff clean. Throw your trash in the trash can.
Well, and our drinking water comes from this river.
Okay.
And you'd be amazed you say that in a classroom or somewhere and people's eyes get big, like, what? Really? And you explain to them how, downstream between here and Maryville, there's a big water treatment plant that pulls water out of the river, and it provides our drinking water.
Okay.
It goes through a big process, and they're like, oh, yeah, do you want to drink that if you're...
Yeah.
Right. Do you see somebody dump the oil from their truck in it or throw their garbage in there? No. Okay. Yeah. So that's been really cool.
So those types of lessons will last and move forward with those time after time.
I hope so.
So as you're in the outdoors now, and you've moved from the farm. Let's start moving forward just a little bit.
Sure. I moved to Tennessee after college. Loved being in the mountains out here. My brother had moved out here while I was in college, and so I started visiting, and 2 weeks after college graduation, I moved to Knoxville. I was out of Oklahoma, came out here so I could be outside more, and figured that I could find a job anywhere. It didn't matter if I was in Oklahoma or Tennessee, so I came to Tennessee. And
Well, when you're young like that, that's the time to do it, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The world was my oyster.
Right, exactly.
So years passed, and I was living in Knoxville, and I got very sick. And the day I was diagnosed with a disease that women in my family didn't get till their late 40s, I lost my job the same day.
So here you are, 20 years old-ish?
I was 24.
24?
Yeah, I think I was 24, 20. Yeah, mid to late 20s, mid-20s. Yeah, 24, 25, something like that. I had been working in advertising several years already, so it was probably more to my late 20s. I can't even remember exactly the year. It was right about the time I met Ian, and I met Ian in February 98. So it was 1998. So I'm diagnosed with this disease, and I lose my job, and I'm like, well,
In the same day.
In the same day, all in the same day. And I was living in Townsend, but I was commuting to Knoxville for my job because my office was on the second floor of a building in downtown Knoxville, and I could see the mountains from my office window. So I could sit at my desk, work at the computer, and still see the mountains. And I knew that was home.
Right.
Because I was living in Townsend. And even though I worked so late some nights, I didn't always make it back to Townsend. I ended up sleeping on the couch of a coworker or something. I knew that was home, and that was kind of my release and my happy place to be.
So were you able to get into the mountains whenever you were working in Knoxville?
Very little. I was working crazy long hours. My job was very demanding. I worked for a very demanding boss. And it was just a small agency, but it was really growing quickly and taking on big clients, and, everybody wanted it yesterday, and it was chaotic. And I didn't really realize how chaotic it was until I was out of it. One of those things, you don't really realize it till you step back and you're like, oh my gosh, that's insane. So when I got sick, the doctor told me that it was stress that made me have that disease now instead of in my late 40s. I didn't realize it as much at the time as I do now, and I've had so many different experiences in nature since then that have really shown me more and more how much being in the river and in the woods was so healing for me going through that. And I didn't realize it at the time as much as I do now.
So two things. One, stress can be an influencer.
Stress will kill you.
Yeah, to get you out of there.
Yes.
That sometimes that's the right answer.
Sometimes it takes
move on.
Yeah. It was a big hello down there.
Right. And then the next influence there would be that you were able to get out into the woods, and you were able to get, into I guess you probably came to the park. If you're right here in Townsend, you probably went into the park a little bit.
Yeah. And the opportunities I'd had before then to get in, I just loved it. And it was just such a beautiful, peaceful place to be. And I had made friends with Ian. He lived down the street from where I was living, but I hadn't really had time to get to know him because I worked all the time. So when I didn't have a full-time job and I was going through this treatment, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I knew Ian had Thursdays off from his job. So I would start following along with him, watching him fish, and he would take me places in the park, and I felt safe because I was with somebody who knew their way around. And so I watched him fish for a long time before I ever asked him if I could cast a rod. So then the day that I finally cast a rod, I'm a visual person, I'm an artist. I learn things much better by watching them than by reading about them. And so the first time I cast a rod, I just got it. I knew, I had seen the mechanics of what the rod did and what he was doing with his cast to make it do what it did. And I wasn't great at it, but I understood how to make it go,
right.
how to cast it.
You've been watching it for 3 months now.
I've been watching it, for several months.
So you really kind of probably thought, well, I can do that.
Well, it was just, I think I told you earlier, I was like a little kid every time I went into the park, especially now after I've had children. I was like, God, I had to be so annoying. It's like a 3-year-old. What's that? I remember the first time asking him about the rhododendron, because in Oklahoma, I asked him, I was like, what are these? Because they were blooming at the time.
Oh, yeah, right.
And I was like, what are these? They're so beautiful, and they're huge, and they're everywhere. And he's like, oh, that's rhododendron. I was like, no, that can't be rhododendron. And he kind of looked at me, and I said, rhododendron's like a little bush in the front yard. In Oklahoma, right. They rarely got more than knee high. Everything's so dry. And,
right.
And he's like, no, this is a wild rhododendron. They grow here in the mountains everywhere. And I was just like, oh, wow.
I
felt
would think
like a big dummy.
he would know what that is.
Well, he
with his
did. Well, and he
background.
studied botany and zoology, so
Right.
he knows so much about every plant and every animal, and he's got so much in him. And he's a great teacher. And so when he finally agreed to teach me, I joke that he had to make sure I was serious about him before he would teach me how to fly fish. So he asked me on a date, and we ended up dating. The anniversary of our first date was on our honeymoon.
Oh, wow.
So from the time of our first date, we were married a year later, and the rest is history.
History, as they
kinda
say. Right. So the park probably has some influence on you as well. I know it did. It did me whenever I first started fishing. We lived in. It's funny you said that you had an office that you could look out and see the mountains. I don't know if it's worse to look out and not see the mountains, like you're far enough away from them, or to look out and see the mountains and think, "Wow, I'm right here. I could run right up and fish whatever stream I wanted to." But
Yeah, I think it's better to see them. It keeps that hope in there.
I think you're right.
It keeps that hope alive.
But I remember the park. The park taught me how to present a fly, although it took me probably a lot longer to really get what presentation was, especially with the dry.
Yeah,
and
it's a beast.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a different kind of beast.
Unless you've got somebody that'll take the time, and I had someone take the time with me and show me what a good drift really was. I'm not sure I could step right back in and go right back to where I was, but I think after a little bit of time, I could figure out how to get a good drift. But again, presentation is what it's all about. What's the probably, this is kind of off the cuff. What do you think is the number one thing that Ian taught you when you first were starting? What was the number one? What's the thing that probably sticks out in your mind the most?
To be sneaky.
To be sneaky.
I learned a lot about, until I was actually fly fishing, I didn't realize how similar it was to hunting.
Right.
Staying hidden, being sneaky. The fish don't want to get caught. And if they see you coming before they see your fly, move on.
Yeah, you really don't stand a chance up, especially in these types of conditions.
No, and I guess that's another thing too here, that someone who's listening who might not have ever fished in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, it's all wild. The water is really, really clear, like so clear that you would compare it to the water you have in a drinking glass to drink.
Right.
So clear. So, and our fish are very topwater oriented. They're always looking up. We have a huge variety of bugs here. A lot of people think they're small because they're starving. That's not the case. They have a lot of bugs. And because we have such a variety of bugs, it's not as often about the fly here as it is about the drift. We sometimes if you have a fish come up and look at your fly and they don't eat it, you can switch your fly, get them to eat it, or maybe it was was it your drift or was it your fly? Watch the fish for a little bit. Lots of times when I'm taking people fishing, I don't tell them, right away, we don't tie a fly on. They'll say, well, what are we going to fish today? It's like, let's walk down and look at the water and see what we can see. Are we seeing things about this big and yellow flying around? Let's put on something that's a little more yellow just to match what's going on. But other times you can just put on a basic pattern, and if you get a good drift, they're going to eat it.
The one thing I had to learn was don't let the fly line. First one was don't let the fly line hit the water. Then it was don't let the leader hit the water. And then it was don't let the tippet hit the water. When you get into that.
Well, it depends. Yeah,
that
depends on what kind of water you're casting in.
That was the toughest thing for me to learn whenever Pat was trying to teach me how to get a good drift. And you're right, it does depend on the water.
Yeah.
And I think that he liked to fish a certain kind of water, so that's where we went. Mm-hmm. And that was one of his things. Just let the fly land on the water and just make sure it doesn't get any drag.
Yeah, sometimes I'll do that. We call it high sticking. And I'll tell people, make a cast, and I want you to hold that fly like you're trying to barely let it touch the water.
Yep.
Like you're just barely letting it dip its feathers in the water.
Right. And when you get that,
sometimes that's a really easy way to help somebody understand the drift, because the water, there's so many different boulders and things here that really pull the water in multiple directions, that if you lay a bunch of line out, it goes all kinds of different directions and drags your fly around. That's not natural.
This isn't a river runs through it here.
No.
There's not a river runs through it where there was a river runs through it probably either, but that's what we think. If you've seen the movie, that's the image that you have in your mind of fly fishing is, I'm supposed to.
Well, and it's a beautiful image.
Oh, yeah.
And
first I got to get a funny hat, and then I have to get a fly rod or a long whippy stick, whatever that thing is, and then I have to get out in the middle of the river. Those are kind of the three things.
Yeah,
that if you've
funny.
seen the movie and that's where you start, if that's your starting point, that's how you think it is. We all have the funny hats and all, but not necessarily because of the movie. Let's talk about Ian some and how he influenced you. So you two met fishing at where did you say, at Blackberry Farms?
No, we met in a fly shop.
Met in a fly shop.
We had a mutual friend that was guiding for Ian. He was managing a fly shop.
Oh, okay.
And we had a mutual friend that introduced us in the fly shop. And it's crazy that we met in a fly shop and this is our life, but it is. I was really fortunate when I met Ian, was working in Knoxville, lost my job, was going through treatment for my disease and started fishing. I really am so fortunate that, fishing with Ian and all of his friends that he fished with too, it was really their lifestyle. It wasn't just a job or just, it was something that they were very passionate about. Almost all of them had done it most of their lives, had been fishing most of their lives, and most of them grew up right here. So they had a real understanding for being in the mountains and the bugs and the fish and everything else living that was out there around us while we were in the rivers. It really created what's the word I'm looking for? It just really created a group of people that were all like-minded when they were in the water.
A real community.
It was a real community of people, like a real family of people that all had the same passion and respect for being in nature and being in the river and fishing.
Fishing is what brings a lot of people. It's amazing the types of people that can come together.
It
because
really
of because of fly fishing.
Yeah, it really is.
And they end up being friends, and you would look, you step back from them, and you go, you two don't fit together, but you've got a common interest.
Yeah.
And it brings you together, and the next thing you know, they're super tight.
Yeah. Well, and this may sound really silly, but even just last week, Ian and I we had a few hours, and the weather was decent, and we're just like, it's not raining. It's been raining here for so long. It's like, it's not raining. Let's just go on a walk. And at one point I just walked over, we were walking up Lindcamp Prong, walking along the river, and everything was kind of dusted with snow. And at one point I just walked to the water's edge and I was looking down in the water. I got emotional. I got a knot in my throat. I got a little teary, and I was like, gosh, we're in such an amazing place. And I just felt so grateful that I could be here. There's just so much to, like you were talking about your friend, be where you are and appreciate what's around you. And, I try my best every day to take advantage of that and be grateful for being in this place and what's around me and who's around me and sharing this with people as they come visit.
It's really good to get a perspective of someone that's in the area, lives there, guides there, more so than just the fishing.
Yeah.
I mean, that brings us together and all that, but there's just so much more from, the coffee shop that we were at this morning where we met. I never would have stopped there because even pulling in, I couldn't find it. I mean, I knew what we were looking for, and I knew it was on the left side of the road.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have stopped there probably. I would have stopped at another one, back in Maryville that I knew was there and I could count on being there. But that may have been one of the best cups of coffee I've had, and I can't remember when. It was absolutely fantastic.
It's a great little shop.
It really is. So somebody that lives or is in the area all the time can tell you, not only where the great spots to fish are, but where's the best place to overlook the city, or where's the best place to possibly see a bear. And we'll get to a bear story here in a minute if you've got one. I know we didn't talk about that, but
I do.
There seems
bear stories.
There seems to be a bear story from everybody, and my story is we never saw bears when we lived here. When we moved away, when we would come back here, we would go through Kate's Coves multiple times throughout a week. We would come spend a week up here. We would go through multiple times and never see a bear. I mean, I know everybody gives me the same look.
You didn't see them on when you were staying in that cabin?
No. And I know they were there. But, those sorts of things. And the best cup of coffee is here, and the best place to eat here, the best blackberry pie or pie is across the street there. And getting to know. And if we go on vacation somewhere, I am always trying to find a local person,
Yes.
always.
Yeah. Oh, look at the car tags in the parking lots.
Yeah, and try to gravitate toward those people and find out,
Yes.
hey, on Friday night, where do you go out to eat? Because that's where I'm going to want to go because I know it's going to be good.
Yeah, or even better, on a Tuesday night, where are the locals' cars?
Yeah, right.
Go there.
Yeah, I want to go there, exactly. And most people are like, hey, let's go here because it's right on the strip that we're wherever we are. It's right on the main drag. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I want to go off the main drag.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a bear story because I know you've got one. I've heard a couple of Ian's, which have been interesting, but it seems like if we get into this, we get into whenever we get into one of these recordings, a lot of times we get into, hey, tell me about your wildlife stories that you have. So
funny. Okay. Yeah, I would say one of our most recent bear stories, one of our funniest ones, was just from a couple of years ago. I think it was not this past fall, but the one before. Ian and I had been out with the fisheries biologist in the park the day before, and it was September. We left all of our wet gear in the back seat of his car, his truck. And the next morning, getting the kids ready for school, he was looking for his travel coffee mug. And he goes out to his truck, opens the door, smells like wet boots, getting stinky. So he rolls down his driver's side window of his Xterra, grabs his coffee mug, goes back in the house, getting kids rounded up for school, goes back outside right before time to go to get the fishing gear out of the seat, because the kids have to sit in the back seat. And he opens up the back door of the Xterra, and there's a bear sitting in the back seat eating my protein bar out of my backpack. And now the only window that was down was the driver's window. So he's on the driver's side of the back door, and he's like, if I yell, it's coming straight this way.
Right.
So he just slammed the door and came back in the house. And our house has kind of like a little bridge deck thing from the driveway to the front door. And so he steps in the door and he's like, okay, everybody, this is a first timer for us. Come here. And so we all come outside and we're looking. He's like, look at my truck. And we're looking up at the truck and we're kind of looking at him like, what?
Come on, Dad, tell us.
Yeah, what's the deal? And so it's parked where the passenger doors are towards the house. So it's, parallel to the house. So we're looking, and then all of a sudden we see these big bear feet appear on the other side of the car. And I looked at him, and he starts nodding his head like, mm-hmm. And I said, did that bear just climb out of your truck? And he said, yes. So then the bear walks to the front of the truck and turns and looks at the four of us standing on the front porch like, what? So Ian claps his hands and starts yelling at it to go on, and it runs off into the woods. We go to the car. And the center console has been ripped open, like broken open. The dash is covered with slobbers, like it had totally licked the entire dash. Steering wheel, dash, everywhere people's hands had touched, pretty much it had licked. So it was slobbery and stinky. And then we opened the back door, and it had chewed a hole in my 15-year-old backpack.
My favorite backpack.
My little Patagonia convertible pack that connect to my fishing vest that I always carry. I use it. I carry guide lunches and jackets and waters and stuff. Chewed a hole in it about the size of a baseball. And he had eaten two of the protein bars, the two of my peanut butter protein bars that I'd had in there from the day.
Oh, wow.
But, he didn't rip up the interior. He could have really done a lot of damage, and he didn't. But there was bear hair all over the seat because he was literally sitting in the seat next to our son's booster seat, in the back of the car.
Sitting here having me a protein bar.
So that was pretty funny. That was a pretty good one.
That is a good bear story.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, ours was always, it was always come up here, spend, we'd come back and spend a week. Rent a cabin, spend a week, look for bears every day. Oh, after a while, it just became the running joke. Hey, you want to go run around Cades Cove and not see a bear?
And scare the bears away.
Yeah.
Want to make the bears hide? Let's go drive through Cades Cove.
Yeah, and I was talking to some friends of mine one day, and I said, where are you going? Going to Townsend, see, spend a week. Oh, okay. Where you staying, all that. And eventually I would get around. We're going to go see if we can see a bear. We've been up there. I don't know how many times I came up on a Friday. When we lived in Knoxville, I would come up on Friday afternoon and fish, never see a bear. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I was in the park.
Don't you
doing
wonder
that.
how many times you fished through the stream and there was a bear sitting in the woods and just watched you go?
I know.
Like,
I know.
Why is that guy in my river?
And I would tell my friends, I've been up there hundreds of times, never seen a bear. And one of my friends was like, "Yeah, we just rode up to the Smokies on Sunday, and we were just driving down that main road between Townsend and going over to Gatlinburg up by Oakmont, and there's a big old male bear sitting right on the side of the road, and I just, you know what? I think I hate you, and
That's funny.
Finally, one fall, we were up in Cades Cove, and we saw a mother and 3 cubs.
Oh,
right
big
off
score.
the road. Oh yeah,
That's fun.
yeah. So that was after 15 years of looking. so that's our non-bear story.
They're beautiful. They're fun to see.
Yeah, they are.
Fun
they
to
are.
see 'em.
I've had some definite encounters of non-bear since we've been coming here. So Ian is definitely an influence, and as we were talking before, he influenced me in my rowing the first time that
Nice.
that whenever I bought the boat from y'all, the first boat that I had.
He's a great teacher. He's definitely, he got me into all this. And anytime we see our friend Tim that introduced us, Tim Mason Cup, and he'll say something about, oh, it's just so cool that y'all are doing all this. And I'm like, well, it's your fault.
Yeah.
You're the one that introduced us and got this mess started.
And I just actually met Tim at the coffee shop just a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Whenever we were getting together, and you're a great teacher too. I hear really good things about your guiding and your teaching and that sort of thing. I do. I listen to what other people say.
I love to teach it.
And I always hear she catches bigger fish than Ian. That is like a folklore that's come true. That he'll catch some. He catches nice fish, but apparently you catch nicer fish than he does.
Well, not always, but yeah, we kind of joke. It's like, well, people say, it's like, well, do you want more fish or do you want bigger fish? But that's not always true. No, he's the master for sure. I definitely he has a sense about it like no one I've ever known.
Well, that's nice of you to say, and humble and all, but I know that you've learned a lot from him for sure.
I have.
And you pass it along just like you did at the very first with your presentation. You never get a
second chance to make a first impression.
Even on a fish. Even on a
anything,
fish.
really.
Well, is there anything else that you want to take a minute and talk about?
Talking about me going through my healing process, and something I didn't really realize through the years, I've done a lot of volunteer work with Casting for Recovery. Helped bring that to Tennessee with a group of women, and learning a lot. I used to go to North Carolina to help with retreats because Tennessee didn't have a retreat, and I was invited to go help as a casting instructor and river guide there, to be a part of a team there. And it serviced North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Georgia. So all of those states came together. They pulled participants from all those states. But at the very first retreat I was at, and I heard it again and again, every retreat I attended and was a part of, something that I noticed the first time I went that kind of made me sit back and say, yeah, that's really right. A lot of the women talking about going through cancer, and it's such a life-changing and life-threatening situation, talk about how after going through that, or as they went through that, how they noticed the sunset more, or a bird on a tree, or the sound of water in a river, or just little things that were always around them that meant more after they had been through that situation. And I think, even now, in the last 5 years, there's been so many studies talking about how nature is healing. There are companies in Japan that now pay for people's nature therapy. Their health insurance covers it because they know they need it to de-stress, and there's so much to that. And the older I get and the more people I meet, the more I understand that. you guide. Lots of times I say that I'm a guide, but I'm also a counselor lots of times to people on the river. It's like when they can be unplugged and be removed from their daily whatever, they just kind of unload things that are on their mind or on their heart or that's been hard for them.
Absolutely.
And I usually don't know them on a personal level before I'm on the river with them, but then you learn so much about them through them just telling you stuff. And sometimes I'll go as far as saying, okay, now that you're done with that story, go ahead and dangle your feet off this rock where you can feel the water rushing around your legs. Sit here for a minute and just close your eyes and listen to the water and listen to yourself breathe for a minute. And I will actually stop and do that with people. And then a couple of years ago, I heard this whole thing called forest bathing.
What is that?
And people are like, what? You go take a bath in the river?
Sounds a little weird.
No, it's what we do. We take people out to let them experience nature and be quiet in it and feel it and see it and touch it, whether it's rocks or tree bark or moss or a fish.
Right.
It's just so calming and healing that the further removed I am from the time that I was going through my healing, the more I understand how important it was for me to be outside during that and how healthy it is for other people to be out in it.
Being out in it is a blessing. It really is. Yeah. And that sounds all okay. Well, that's what I'm supposed to say.
I'm like getting a knot in my throat talking about it.
I always say that we do float trips. That's all I do. I don't wade. My wife calls me a boat snob, and that's probably true.
Well, it's where you live. That's where the fishing's best.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I float people down the river, and they're super relaxed. And then we stop and we get out for lunch, and it seems to slow them down just a little bit more. And then the afternoon, they're like super relaxed. So they took the morning to learn whatever it is I'm trying to tell them or show them or whatever. And they're most of the time they're catching fish by then. And then we stop and we eat, and then we get back in the boat, and it's like they're in a whole different zone because they've actually stopped and the water's going by super slow and they're just kind of soaking in stuff. So I get exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's something very calming about the water and the trees and the birds, and I don't know, I'm assuming where you guide, you probably still have phone signal, but for me, guiding in the national park, there's no phone signal. So people are forced to be completely unplugged.
Right.
While we're in the park. That alone, I am, because of my lifestyle that I've chosen and the way I live, it's not a big deal for me to go a few days unplugged. It's fine. It's normal. But to see how people, lots of times the first part of the day, they'll keep checking their phone or holding it up to see if they have signal. And I finally say to them, I'm like, when we go around the bend and past the Texaco station, when we go back into town, you'll have signal again. But until then, there's no signal up here.
Right.
You can use that to take pictures, but you're not going to get messages or be able to check your email or anything. And once they let go of that, it's almost like you see a release come off of their shoulders almost, where they're not worrying about that. And they slow down. And there's so much I could just babble on about for a long time, David.
I usually take their phone away right away.
Oh.
I put it in the box with mine.
Oh, that's wise.
Yeah.
Just tell them it has to be dry.
Well, yeah. I mean, the last thing I want to do is try to fish somebody's phone out of the river.
Do you tell them to silence it when you put it in your bag?
They usually turn it off.
Do they?
And I usually
take.
I take pictures with mine if they want to take a picture or whatever, and then send it to them later. But you're right. As soon as they quit turning around and looking at the box, right beside the rower on the rower's bench, as soon as they quit doing that,
it changes. Something switches.
Something switches off in their mind, and I give it back. I mean, if they need it, that's fine. I've had, as people they hire a guide, and then I had one guy hire a guide, and then his buddy texted him before I could get hold of his phone, and we got on the water and said that some big company was buying out another company, and he spent the rest of the float buying stocks. He bought, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of stocks he bought, but he made a lot of money on that trip.
Oh, my God.
While his brother,
I hope he gave you a good tip.
His brother, I don't remember, but his brother caught the snot out of fish. So he was doing what he wanted to do, and the guy in the back of the boat was doing what he wanted to do, and everybody, after I figured out, hey, he's just not going to fish. Okay.
He's not going to fish, and that's his choice.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's funny. The technology's beautiful because it means we can, on months like this when we're in a
Yeah.
slow time, we can work on books and do
podcasts.
do podcasts.
Yeah.
And technology allows us to communicate and be wherever we want to be most of the time. And so that's the beauty of it. But I think at the same time, I think it's made us all too available sometimes. Maybe we're too easy to reach,
Yeah.
and maybe we don't turn it off as much as we should. So I like to try to help people do that. I think it makes a difference.
And if you've experienced it in your life, which you have,
Yeah.
that it's easy to pass that knowledge along and say, hey, if you'll just let go for a minute, you'll get some of what I've got.
Yeah.
Because you've definitely got it. You understand that being out there on the river, I mean being out there in nature, but being on the river.
Yeah.
Since this is a fishing podcast, we'll try to keep it there.
Yeah.
There's more to it than just, hey, I've caught this nice fish.
Fishing.
You know,
Yeah.
here's a picture of this nice fish, but
Yeah.
you know,
Fishing's the icing on the cake.
it really is.
Yeah.
It's the common thread.
It is.
But, you know, the kingfisher, hearing the kingfisher, you know, seeing the snake that I don't want to see, you know, and seeing the bear.
Yeah.
You know, those sorts of things you don't always get a picture of, but you sure remember it. And that's sure the things that a lot of times you want to talk about.
Well, and so much when you're fly fishing, too, you're imitating nature. You know, when you're on a hike, you're just out in it,
Right.
looking at it, you know, breathing it, looking at it, experiencing it, whatever. But when you're in the river, where the fish live, where the bugs are, and you're throwing them something that's made out of string and feathers to convince them that that's a live critter that they need to eat,
Right.
you know, that's a pretty big deal. And
Yeah.
I think you see it differently when you're in the water looking up than when you're up on a trail looking down. It's just it's a different experience. I wouldn't say totally different, but there's a lot of things that you experience differently by moving through the water,
Right.
instead of out of it and on a trail.
And each has its place.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to the park and just fish and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Oh,
not the
there's so
only
many
way
things
you
to
can
do.
you can experience the park for sure.
No, there's so much.
Yeah, and it's all pretty good.
There's really something to be said about, you know, just breathing air that doesn't come through a heat and air vent.
Right.
You know, it's just different.
So true. Another wise word. Right. That's two wise things that I'll probably take back with me for sure. If nothing else, those two will be it. So we've had a great talk.
Thank you.
It's been very good.
Thank you.
From your influences in Oklahoma down to the park and the things that you learned from Ian, and Ian's a good guy. And like I said before, I hear nothing but good things about you and your guiding. And
Thank you.
And that's one of the reasons why you're on here.
Thank you.
If I wasn't hearing good things, we wouldn't be probably talking. And and I hope that you're glamping is what it sounds like.
Glamping,
yeah. That's what it sounds like. I hope that works out well. And
Thanks.
it's been nice. It's been a good conversation here at the Heritage Center.
Thank you.
And hopefully the rain will be stopped by the time it's time for me to get back on the road. So this has been the Angler's Influence, Southeastern Fly. We've been talking to Charity Rutter, one of the first R probably in R&R fly fishing here in Townsend, Tennessee. If you're in the Great Smoky Mountains, I'd certainly think you should look them up. Either's going to be fine to fish with, and you're going to learn a lot from either one of them. Charity tries to sell herself a little short, I think, and she's very humble, but she's a very good teacher. And if you've listened to this whole episode, it was very good at the start, and I learned some stuff. And at the end, she threw in a couple of nuggets as well that you can definitely take back with you. So, Charity, thanks a lot for spending the time with us.
Thanks, David.
And I hope to see everybody on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.